guys, Mike here from Fortinet Guru. There's been a fairly large number of requests about troubleshooting issues with managing a FortiSwitch from an HA FortiGate cluster, a stack of FortiSwitches, not individual FortiSwitches. And so I figured we would do a quick whiteboard session architecting how you would really want to do that deployment from a FortiLink perspective, and how you want your devices physically cabled up and things like that. So for the sake of the video, we're going to do a small unit, so like 260Es, right? So you have your 260E clusters, or your 260E FortiGates, and they are connected via HA. So you have your active-passive pair, or your active-active, however you want to do it. Usually in deployments like this, you want to do it in active-passive because it's not until 6.2 where active-active gets a little bit better on the FortiLink side of things. And then you have your stack of switches, right? So you have switch 1, switch 2, and switch 3. We'll just say you have these 3 switches. What a lot of people are trying to do is they're trying to use the internal hardware switch of this cluster, so ports 1 through 7 on the FortiGate 60E, and they're basically trying to directly connect each switch up to each FortiGate. And a lot of the issues that people are experiencing is that from the GUI management side of things, periodically various switches will show as offline, disconnected, not manageable. You just lose that visibility that really the whole benefit of having it managed by the FortiGate comes from. So the way that Fortinet actually recommends that you cable this up is, instead of having everything go directly up to the FortiGates, you do something called a redundant link. So for example, you create a logical interface that's a redundant link, and for this display we will put port 1 and port 2 into this link. So we'll just say 1, 2, 1, 2. Now remember, when the FortiGate is in an HA cluster, logically it's one device. So if you have your HA cluster built and you're building your redundant link, and you add port 1 and port 2, it's going to add port 1 and port 2 from each FortiGate to that. So you have your redundant link, you build that link, you add the interfaces to it, and then this is a really important step. When you're selecting to make that interface be dedicated to FortiSwitch or FortiLink, there's another option that says enable split FortiLink. Basically makes the FortiLink a split FortiLink interface. And what that does is it'll only use one port from that redundant link for an active FortiLink connection. The other port will be used for a standby FortiLink connection. That way, if the primary goes down, it'll kick over to the other one, etc. And then basically, from your physical cabling standpoint, this is how you would do it. Actually, I'll switch cable colors for us so we can have a little bit more difference. Now there's a little bit of a glare from my monitor and whatnot, so I apologize there. But basically, you just say, let's say these are 24 port switches. Port 24, I like to use the last port on a switch as the uplink port to primary switch, and the second to last port for uplink to secondary, etc. So we'll say port 24 to FortiGate 1 port 1, port 23 to FortiGate 2 port 1, which means logically that one switch is now highly available to both FortiGates, etc. So if you lose port 1 on this one, it can switch over to port 1 on that one, etc. Now, for the other switches, you would do the same thing on the last switch, because this is a stack. So you would say port 24 on the last switch, I want you to be connected to port 2 of FortiGate 1 and port 2 of FortiGate 2. And I'll redraw this so that you can see the more simplified view. But basically, switch 1 connects up to FortiGates 1 and 2 via the primary port. Switch 3 connects to ports 2 and 2 of, or FortiGate 1 into port 2, and that'll be basically your standby link. And then, using whatever ports you want, as long as they have inter-switch link configuration turned on, which by default it does unless you start editing LLDP profiles and things like that. You just connect all these together. So you connect switch 1 to switch 2, switch 2 to switch 3, switch 1 to switch 3, and then switch 3 goes up to FortiGates, switch 1 goes up to FortiGates. It's cumbersome, right? But basically that means if you lose this link, switch 1 can talk up, and then switch 2 and switch 3 can talk the other way, etc. So it gives you highly redundant capabilities without eating up a ton of ports on your FortiGate. The grand scheme of things, basically, whenever you have a stack, where'd my eraser go? When you have a stack of switches, and they pretty much ask you to do this in all situations as long as you're not running MC lag, which will be a whole nother video in itself. But, you know, switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, switch 4, switch 5. The overall thing on this is just for the stack. This is excluding the FortiGate itself. You connect them all interchangeably. So maybe you do port 10 to port 10 between switch 1 and switch 2, port 11 to port 11 between switch 2 and switch 3, port 12 to 12 between switch 3 and switch 4, and maybe 13 to 13 or whatever between switch 4 and switch 5, and then you directly connect these puppies together. Basically builds a ring, gives you full interconnectivity capabilities, so you can lose a link and your stack doesn't go down and it's fully capable. And then from the Fortinet side of things, I'll draw this over here, and I'm only going to draw a single FortiGate. Let's say this is our FortiGate. This will be the primary link. This is your active FortiLink. And then this will be your standby. That way you don't get any weird routing. FortiGate doesn't have any extra overhead having to deal with redundant links, etc., which is one of the reasons why the switches constantly fall off whenever you're doing everything up to the FortiGate, is it's given the FortiGate a lot to keep up with directly, and it processes a lot of traffic through it that way, so this actually helps keep things pushed down and on the switch versus it going straight up. So if you're having issues managing FortiSwitch with an active-passive FortiGate cluster, cable your switch stack like this and use the redundant logical interface with standby enabled, connecting it to switch 1 and then the bottom switch of your stack. I guarantee you'll have a lot better an experience in general. Now obviously there's like 9 or 10 different FortiSwitch managed by FortiGate network topologies. We will actually go through all of them and explain the benefits, the pros and cons, etc. But even with an active-passive cluster, Fortinet highly recommends that you do not use the internal switch as your FortiLink interface, because it pushes everything, management, everything, all the way up directly to the FortiGate, whereas when you do inter-switch linking, the switches help shoulder that load. So give this a whirl. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the comments. I know I tend to get a little ranty or go off on tangents, so I might not always be as clear as I would hope whenever I explain things. So I'll be more than happy to answer questions or do response videos that specifically target the questions that you have, so that we can hopefully make your managed FortiSwitch experience significantly better. You top to bottom visibility and central pane of glass, I hate that term, but it's really the best one here. Being able to manage your FortiGate, your FortiSwitch, your FortiAP directly from one device is phenomenal. A lot of my deployments are getting scaled a lot wider because of the FortiManager and the new things that are coming along with it. So give this a whirl. Try your inner switch links. Build your stack the right way. Your connectivity should be much improved. And if it's not, post some questions down in the comments and I'll help. Also, go ahead and put your switches on 6.0 code. A lot of people are holding on to 3.6 code because it's older and more tried and true, but 6.2 is already out. I'm about to push a lot of clients over to that. So put your switches on 6.0 code, put your FortiGates on 6.0 code. I recommend at least 6.04 because it gets rid of some GUI bugs. But once a couple more iterations of 6.2 come out, my FortiGates should go into that. And 6.2, while it's providing a lot of new functionality, it's also giving you a pretty large list of bug fixes. For instance, there's over 146 bugs fixed in 6.2 between 6.04 code and 6.2, just for the FortiManager alone. And if you have a big enterprise, that's a big deal. So hit me up below for questions, and if you need anything, just give me a shout. Thank you much.